All right, Dayo, my friend, how's it going? Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, anytime, man. Cool. Well, I want to kind of start this conversation with I don't know how to describe it. Maybe describing like a scene of a movie. I watched this movie last week. I don't know if you've seen it. It's called Columbus, um, and the film is very similar to like your work and your kind of style. And I rewatched it in preparation for this, and there was a scene that stood out to me in the movie. And I'll just kind of describe the scene and then ask you a question afterwards. So the scene starts off with a American woman or teenager rather. Her name's Casey, and a South Korean man, Jin, and they are in this movie as context. They meet up. They kind of just spark a haphazard friendship, and Jin, the man, finds out that Casey's really into architecture and that the place in Columbus that they are living is it's kind of like a mecca for architecture, for this specific type of modernist architecture. So throughout this scene, Casey is taking Jin on kind of like a tour and showing him her favorite, you know, buildings, her favorite architecture places. And there's this one scene in particular where she brings Jin to a bank, and the kind of angle or the crop of the image is very wide, so you see everything. You see Casey, you see Jin, and so you see the building. And she Jin or Casey says, "Hey, this is like my third favorite place ever, like my third favorite building." And Jin asks, well, that's interesting. Why is it your favorite place? And Casey goes on to say, it's my favorite place because of, it was built in this era. It had this specific quality to it. It served this type of people. And she kind of goes on and on and on. And the angle kind of crops out again. And you see Jin like, you know, waving in front of her face. And he's like, hey, is anyone in there? And she kind of sits back and says, like, what are you talking about? And he said, like, I asked, what what about this building moves you? I didn't ask, like, do you like it because of its intellectual facts, or do you like it for deeper reasons? So I wanted to ask you, Dayo, what about filmmaking or creativity moves you?
Whoa, what a build up to that question. I love it. Um, hmm. What about filmmaking and creativity moves me? I I see filmmaking really as like a language,
Hmm.
a language of art, and it's built really on storytelling. And storytelling is the most almost important part that humans carry with us, like stories, and tell each other. And I think filmmaking in that sense is for me the most natural. First off, it's because I'm dyslexic. I think in images, like not writing and vocabulary and just grammar is not doesn't feel natural to me. It's I need a lot of effort to understand writing, and images are so feel very natural to me, and I think in images.
Mm.
So when I see a movie, it yeah, it touches me, or I can understand it better as a language, really, like as like what is the maker, the creator trying to tell me in subtext, in
Mm.
like not really in what the characters are saying or what he's showing, but like why is he showing, or why is she showing this image after that? Like,
Mm.
what does this cut or the scene tell me? Um, so that's part of my answer. I think that's the reason why it moves me, but um, I think it's a like if you compare it to paintings in an art form, I have more. It's so much more. It's harder for me to understand
Mm. Mm-hmm.
that story, that yeah, the essence of what the artist is trying to communicate. And film is very accessible in that way. It's it's a structure of a story. It's storytelling, and it as its finest, I think, at its
Mm.
finest. So yeah, I think cinema in particular is like a very beautiful art medium to tell a story, and I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. When did you when did you discover that you think in images, or yeah, when was that moment that your eyes kind of opened and you realized, whoa, this filmmaking thing, this is for me.
I think it was when I realized I had, when I was diagnosed with dyslexia.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it was like an eye opener for me, because they discovered it very late, and it actually it's not a big thing, right? A lot of people have this are dyslexic, but for me at that time it was a very big chapter in my life, because until then I felt dumb.
Mm.
Like I didn't understand why I was so different in that sense, and why I wasn't like um, getting the grades that I needed to, and so it it left a big mark in that sense of my self-esteem and or self-confidence. But when I realized it was just dyslexia, and I I could then like start to understand how my brain worked, and I also understand that the genius people or most creative people are dyslexic.
Right.
And I have this book, the it's called in English, the gift of dyslexia,
Mm.
and it's really showing like yeah how Leonardo da Vinci and
Mm-hmm.
Thomas Edison, Albert Einstein, Winston Churchill, Walt Disney, Whoopi Goldberg, all the big creators in their time were dyslexic. And I learned how my brain worked, and I learned then that that I really that that I think differently.
Hmm.
And my girlfriend at the time was the opposite, and she taught in text. Like she was already a few sentences um, behind when she was speaking, and she was also struggling with this. Like her brain worked too fast in that sense, but it was working with text. And I really like, we felt the difference in how we thought and how we see things, and we could experiment with like describing how we see the world, and it is a big difference when you think in images.
Yeah.
um and another part of that is that I draw a lot. Like all my all my talents fell in their place at that time. Like, okay, now I understand why I have these talents and why I don't shine in other areas.
Hmm.
So that was for me the reason, the moment that I thought like, okay, yeah, that makes sense for me.
Yeah. Wow, that's incredible. So at that time, that that awareness of like, okay, my brain operates in this certain way, it is more prone to the visual. So I'm just going to go all into this. Is that kind of what happened?
Yeah, yeah,
Wow, that's incredible. So I want to kind of backtrack. I know that you had a previous conversation with the creator and you talked a little bit about like being a child actor. And I was curious to dig deeper into that. And the reason I ask is because I don't mean to like project or anything, but I could imagine you're maybe a little introverted. Am I correct in saying that?
yeah.
Yeah. So, and I'm introverted too. So I'm like, I'm sitting here thinking about that. And I'm like, how, I don't know. It's like acting is the complete opposite almost of being introvert. You're expected to perform, you're expected to showcase talents and abilities and take on a different persona, tell a story through performing in a way. And I was curious, like, what one, what led you to becoming a child actor and continuing in that? And two, was there any like dissonance or conflict within yourself as, maybe having some introverted tendencies?
Yeah, it's it's interesting that you already know that I'm introverted, and that's indeed a funny combination.
Hmm.
um I also sometimes wonder how I did that. But um, I did my school time in at a Waldorf school. I don't know if you're familiar with that,
Is
but
Where is
it's
that located?
well, it's not like a located school. It's more like a it's um, it's a way of education by
Hmm.
Alder by Al Steiner.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't know how you pronounce his full name. Rudolf Steiner.
Okay.
It's a very beautiful way of education,
Huh.
and in that uh, school, you have you focus also on your creativity, and
Wow.
so we had every year we had a full month of theater with at the end like a full play, and
Hmm.
and and every class needed to do this. So we also saw a lot of theater in that sense. Um, and besides music and other like painting, drawing, and like all the other creative parts you can develop, like theater in that sense like really developed my maybe acting interests.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I just realized that was um, my place of like I was really happy and comfortable on the stage
Hmm.
and and like stealing the show, or like this was really my thing. Like I enjoyed it and I was serious about it, and I had no problem with stepping out of my comfort zone in that sense.
Hmm.
um and I think that can be the start of my acting, uh because it gave me like a good uh basis or ground to start on. And later on I did other things, and but I had that experience of like every year playing theater,
Hmm.
um, to build maybe my confidence and to not be shy,
Yeah.
and to yeah. But to answer your
Yeah.
second question, uh, if it can you repeat the second question, like the second part? If uh,
To be honest, I can't remember my second question.
well, yeah, I remember that if and like how um now it's hard to remember.
Yeah.
Well, that what the hard part is as an introvert
Mm-hmm.
to play and to act. I think it's like I don't have a clear answer on that, because I also think like where is that shift, because I feel like at that time I wasn't an introvert.
Hmm.
Like yeah, I think that developed uh, at another time. I think with self like the late puberty of like maybe 17, or like
Mm-hmm.
with self doubt or ego, and
Mm-hmm.
like around that period that you start comparing yourself and seeing yourself in the world almost like it's you start to be more active, not only in your tight community.
Mm-hmm.
I think it the introvert period started then or something. I don't know.
Sure.
um,
Yeah.
yeah,
And I can understand that too. Like as you get older and as you begin to experience more of the world or just come to a certain awareness of how the world works, um, different expectations that
yeah,
adults have on each other or that, parents might have on kids, that tends to like shift the way that you act or shift the way that you, I guess, see the world or, maybe express some of the innate qualities that are in you or that you experienced more or expressed more as a young child who doesn't necessarily see the ways or the rules, the invisible rules or expectations that the world has.
exactly. And thanks for saying that in such a beautiful way. I was struggling, but it's exactly that I feel. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious. So at what point you acted for quite a while. You were pretty successful in your career as you know, a child into, I think you said you were 17, 18 when you finished.
Yeah, or maybe later.
Okay.
Yeah, but
What
yeah.
brought you out of that? Like, why not continue?
Um, Two things. Like, uh, first, I was seeing how hard it was,
Mm,
the industry, and
mhm,
as an actor, I was finding it very hard to do a lot of castings, and depending on that,
mhm,
um, I didn't want to do the education like as a as an actor. I was a bit scared of it because it's very rough, and
mhm,
um, yeah, I was quite intimidated by that, because I knew a lot of actors that were doing it, and yeah, it scared me a little bit. Um, and so mostly because I saw that it's I was yeah it's hard to create your life around depending on castings.
yeah.
Um, and secondly, I was just uh, becoming like entering that age of other people are educated now and are actors with an education with like grounded in knowledge and
Mm,
experience, um, and that's a really big difference. So I thrived on that period of just being a child actor, uh, who was comfortable with acting in front of cameras, and that is very uh, um, like a lot of how do yeah very what is the name? I mean, they are looking for it.
mm,
That's
mhm,
what I want to say. Like,
yeah.
it's hard to find children,
Mhm,
or teenagers that are comfortable in front of the camera and know
yeah.
how to act and know how to say their lines. So
Mhm,
that's the thing. Like, I thrived in that period of just
yeah.
being like a kid.
Right.
Yeah, and I saw that other people are now better, and I
Mhm,
realized I don't want to go that route. So I was like,
mhm,
okay, that's fine. And I
yeah.
was always open for new opportunities, and I still dream about taking on a big role, um, and like really investing my time in such a project.
Mm,
Um, but I yeah, but I had already some opportunities in that way, and then I declined them, also because I felt like my I'm not focused on this,
mm,
and if this will take like months or almost a year, I mean, it's better to have a focus, and better to have like that this fits your plan, you know.
mhm.
um, and it wasn't my ambition, so
Interesting. So were you acting partly because you had broken into it at an early age and it was all that you knew? So you figured, why not continue?
yeah. Yeah, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I was making good money as a teenager, so that was also nice.
Right. I'm sure
uh,
it was.
yeah, and just the experience, I have a lot of good memories,
Mm,
and a lot of uh, just experience on set
mhm.
now as a filmmaker. So it was
Yeah.
like the seed was planted for me to understand the whole um, movie making, filmmaking,
Yeah.
and I learned a lot of just being on set, because as an actor you have to wait most of the time. So I could just learn as a teenager. It was
Yeah.
such a privilege for me. And when I started doing the filmmaking course or school or masters, um, the I had such a privilege in that sense. Like, nobody in my class had entered a film set yet, and I had
Mm,
like 5 years of experience just being
wow.
and observing like the one of the best filmmakers. Like that's such a privilege.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah. It's incredible. Like as I like the further outside of university I've been, like and yeah, the further I've been outside of university or that setting, that education setting, and have worked and kind of understood the world or the workforce that way, it's incredible how much and how quickly you learn as opposed to going to a class and learning more of the traditional way. I feel
yeah,
like if, you know, in school, well, one, you're able to, explore more your creativity. That's something that I wish I had more experience with in school and in kind of the education system. But then, secondly, like getting that real world experience is such a powerful thing to have because you are comfortable with, you know, the ins and outs of the industry, of what's expected of you. And I like how you did it because, traditionally you learn first and then you gain experience. But with you, it seems like you gained experience first and then you built up the gaps in your knowledge with education. So it's really interesting. And I'm sure cool to reflect back on.
yeah. But I really like thought about not doing the education and just focus on YouTube education.
Oh, like
And like,
learning from YouTube?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I
What
really had a good sit down with myself and like compared everything. Like, what are the
mm,
benefits of doing the traditional um, filmmaking bachelors and masters? Like,
yeah.
yeah, because I don't believe necessarily that it is better to
Mm,
have a master's in film um, to make film.
mhm.
It's it's certainly not necessary. Yeah.
Yeah. What what is required to make a good film?
Well, if you want to make film, it's comforting to know that you are not making it alone.
Mm,
So um, you make it with a whole team eventually, and what's required is a vague ID, like an ID that doesn't need to be um, fixed yet or
mm,
to know everything, but like something that you want to tell, something that is important to tell, because you will work minimum a year, I think,
mm.
on this. For me, like my short film was a year, and my first short film I ever made was 2 years. So that's
Wow.
crazy, but that's also not necessary. You can make. I also have made a short film in 3 days. So to make
Wow.
that clear, like it's not
Yeah.
necessary um to take that much time. But what it's needed is a story, I think, and
Mm,
good characters, and then find a good team and people that are also invested or interested in the message that you want
mm,
to tell. Um, yeah, because you need each other. So I'm really bad at writing, as you know now. Um, so I in the past I really depended on people that could um, tell my story in writing. So
mm.
I was constantly in need of yeah um, friends that could write the script for me or with me. Mm, yeah, but I hope that that answers your question. A good story.
Yeah, it does. There are 2 points that stood out to me when you were describing what makes a good film. One is not doing it alone. I feel like as artists and creatives, we tend to get into the trap of doing it all ourselves or thinking that it's our vision, it's our story, so that, you know, yeah, it's our vision and it's our story, and we're the only ones that can accurately describe it or communicate it. Um, but I found personally that the more that you let people into the process or let people in collaboration, the final piece might not be exactly what you want it to be or exactly what you originally envisioned it to be, but it usually ends up better in the long run or lasts in a deeper way because you have different perspectives and different motivations all aligned with that, like you said, that message or that story. um yeah, that was kind of the first thing. And the second thing, um I forgot again. I'm having some bad memory issues today. um well, I'm curious, had you always, like, so you said with your dyslexia you had a lot of help writing and you had a lot of help with certain things. Was that a challenge for you? Was that something that you kind of invited in, or were you hesitant at first?
Yeah, I struggle with that. Yeah, with asking for help. I still do. I'm quite enjoying now learning to write more because then I feel more independent
Mm-hmm.
um, in my creative process. So yeah, yeah, I was hesitant because it's something that I still need to learn. I have the habit of like asking my girlfriend for help or the girlfriend that I have in that
Mm-hmm.
time. um, about just like referring to the past, like
Right.
um, I always leaned on my partner
Mm.
and for help and for creative help in that sense in writing. And now I feel more like okay, I really need to grow up a little bit in this sense, and I need to learn this skill of
Mm.
writing, copywriting, and just like I know everything of screenwriting and like how to make movies, but if you don't have the basis, then it doesn't flow. And now I feel more confident, like oh, okay, because I'm writing since January more often. I feel already more confident in that process of like okay, if I have an idea, I am able to, or I'm hoping, or I feel like I am more capable now to just like translate it into words on paper, because at the end you need a translation of your vague ideas onto paper so other people
Mm.
can read it, agree with it, um, give comments, and like start with something, but it always
Right.
needs to start with a paper.
Right.
uh, so yeah, but I was hesitant in that way.
Mm. Yeah, writing, the more that I write consistently as well, the more that I see that it's kind of the foundation to a lot of things, whether you're
Yeah.
writing a screenplay, kind of drafting an idea for a film or a story, um, even like graphic design. It's, you sketch more, but oftentimes I'll start with like a word or a story or a loose idea that, starts off in writing. So it's really
Mm.
powerful. And that kind of like it sparked my memory, and that was it sparked my memory for that other question that I wanted to ask. You mentioned that you have when you start films or when you're coming up with an idea, you mentioned that the idea is either vague or you might not know 100% of what the idea is going to look like. And I'm curious, like, does that scare you, or do you just kind of lean into the uncertainty of the idea or the story not being completely finished?
Yeah, I say that because I say that a lot to myself.
Hmm.
I need to say that a lot to myself. It's a lesson that I learned already, and so um, it's still very hard to take a leap or like to start a process with something that doesn't feel there yet. Um, but you have to start somewhere, and you have to start taking your ID seriously some like at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not the point where it's finished, right? So it's not the point where everything is clear. And also for me, it never is clear. Um,
Hmm.
and yeah, it's especially for filmmaking, for cinema, it's still one of the hardest things that I struggle with is exactly that, like having a very good idea, but then 10 minutes later it becomes so vague in your head and you're losing it already.
Hmm.
And I just lean on images.
Hmm.
Like Meander was just based on what I saw at the I was sitting in a train. I listened classical music, and like the trance of a train, like the train can give you like the trance
Mm-hmm.
of filmmaking, because it's like
Hmm.
frames passing your eye.
Hmm.
And I just saw my movie in images, and the images were very touching, and I almost cried then, like, but because of that feeling I knew I had something, like, okay, this is that feeling that I have now because I see these images in front of me. I want to make that. But I didn't know the story. So I didn't know anything about like how, why, like the setting. I just saw very graphic images um, of, to be more precise, like of a family burning their own mother on a mountain, or at that time at the beach or something like.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, and also like carrying the body, and all the physical work that comes with doing that. That was the film that I saw. But that's not at the end, when the train ride ends and you come back home. That's not an ID, right? So that's an ID, but that's not something I can tell to someone. Like, what is your film about? Um, so having, yeah, for me it's hard to just see an image and then think, how can I write this down? I have always a very big barrier in that process of seeing an image and then translating it into text. That's why I'll most of the time need someone to just talk to, and then hopefully that person can translate my vague thoughts into text.
Hmm.
That's at this time, that's my process of like, because I'm dyslexic, that my there is like, or maybe it's just general, and people stand like in general um, struggle with this, maybe like translating an image into text. I don't know.
Hmm.
It's very hard
Hmm.
to me.
Yeah, because I find it easier to translate text to images, but translating images to text is, I feel, more complicated. There's so much information and so much image or emotion in images that might not be explicitly or not explicitly like described, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and especially in film, emotion doesn't matter when you're writing,
Mm.
because that's not something in a script. That's the one rule, that you don't talk about emotion or what what we are feeling like, or what
Why
the
is that?
what the because, like, for instance, it's 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 that language of cinema, or
Mm.
filmmaking, and it's really different from normal language, or like books or something. Like,
Yeah.
if you write about a boy that falls on his knees and has pain, or he's bleeding, like, if it's about the pain that he's feeling, and we write what he feels, the that's the reflex that everybody has. Like,
Mm-hmm.
or take, for instance, grief. It's a feeling, right? Grief
Mm-hmm.
is inside.
Mm-hmm.
That's Meander. That's my movie. It's about
Yeah.
grief. How do you, like, I can't write that how I feel, and then that to be a translation into a movie. It wouldn't work, because how can I explain it? Like, um, yeah, like, it's the art is in using the language of filmmaking through sound, through editing, through cinematography, to give you that emotion, or to to make you understand, and also to take you as an intellectual individual, to trust that you can think for yourself also, and not tell you what you are feeling. That's the one rule. Don't never tell what you are feeling. Like, I feel so sad, or um, like, we have to show that in art, in the way, in filmmaking, in that language, through editing. Editing is such a big language.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so when you're writing a script, you can't write about emotions. That it can be a good cue to an actor to just have some background, but even that is for the actor, almost takes away freedom of doing his or her job.
Mm.
um I mean, yeah, maybe I'm sidetracking now, but
Mm.
yeah, emotion is irrelevant.
Yeah.
So if you have an idea, our instinct is to think about what emotion uh, we want to convey to the audience, and what do you feel, and that character feels sad or feels this, or it's like, yeah, it's the one thing we focus on in filmmaking school, I think, uh, to get rid of that habit in writing, and just focus on what do we see.
Mm.
We see actions, and what what actions do we need to convey that emotion. uh, so it's a totally different way of thinking.
Yeah.
Did that make any sense, or
Deo, I was just about to say that was so beautifully put. I'm like almost speechless. So that did make a lot of sense. Um, hmm. The art of filmmaking is, you touched on a really interesting thing where filmmaking isn't telling someone what to think, it's simply showing what someone's thinking through cinematography, through editing, through sound. And that's fascinating. I've never thought about it that way. Hmm.
Yeah, that a good film is does that. Like we have easy films like Hollywood in
Right.
in I mean that's for entertainment
Hmm.
and also art, of course. It's an art in itself, I think. But there is a whole different kind of cinema, um, where the viewer is expected to be in, active, an active viewer, an intellectual viewer, or yeah, not being taken as stupid and not being told everything in subtitles and dialogue. Um, and that's the beauty of cinema, I think, is the films where you need to watch the movie sometimes a few times, or also cinema makes forces you to sit down in the dark room
Hmm.
and stay there, hopefully.
Right.
Um, so you have your short form, your short term attention span is forced to just watch the whole movie. And yeah, I think that's the beauty of cinema, and its whole is, yeah, that yeah, maybe I don't have to explain it more.
Yeah. It's beautifully put, man. Huh. Do you think cinema has a place in more of a modern or digital setting? Take, for example, streaming or even YouTube, for example. You mentioned, weighing film school with YouTube. Like YouTube is a option where many creators and filmmakers specifically tell amazing stories. Yourself included, you are a prime example of that. Do you think cinema has a place on YouTube or something similar, or can be translated? Can that experience be translated accurately to a platform like YouTube?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting dialogue to have. I think it's important to talk about it at this stage, I think, where YouTube and other platforms are taking a lot of space and attention. Um, well, I think it's firstly important to make clear that cinema and YouTube are just ways of distribution. Um, and I mean, we shouldn't try to make YouTube cinema, or to like, cinema is still in my eyes the whole package.
Hmm.
Being in that dark room, that's cinema to me. So it's maybe, I think it's more a question of, first, I think cinema will stay, is here to stay. I hope so. I believe that because it's one of the most important art forms we have. And yeah, I am a big, I mean, I believe in the future of YouTube and online creation. So, but I think it's just a different way of distribution, and a different audience. Um, and I hope there will go more credit and more attention to, yeah, to create. I don't know. Yeah, it still has to be developed. I think the medium that is films on YouTube or short form content on YouTube. I think we are still in a period of trying stuff out, and yeah, but I believe in the future of that direction because I'm doing it.
Right.
um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. What specifically are you doing to kind of bridge that gap? Or you mentioned YouTube as being a place of distribution, not necessarily a medium itself. So how are you tackling YouTube as a distribution platform and as a creator too,
Yeah,
filmmaker?
I feel a bit stuck in the traditional system at the moment.
Hmm.
Like, yeah, I think because of previous um, experiences, and for instance, I had in the midst of the pandemic, I worked very hard on a pitch for my first TV series, um, and I pitched it and I to a production company, and they agreed. They signed a contract that we would make this, and we did. I mean, we we started writing it, but it just ended up somewhere in a pile of other projects of that
Hmm.
production company.
Hmm.
Um, and I think somewhere underneath the pile or something, like, to make a long story short, like yeah, it made me, it didn't, the project was cancelled in a way,
Hmm.
it just never was realized. And it made me, yeah, frustrated with having people, or just an industry decide what I could make, or what is right now important to make, and where the money can go to. And um, there were a lot of gatekeepers in between, and not to say like in a negative way. I mean,
Hmm.
the whole cinema and film industry is not in that way like toxic, but it is quite old in a sense.
Hmm.
um, I mean, everybody needs to make a cut and make money. And I just realized, like, oh, my producer also just wants to make money. It's
Right.
also a job. It's also like they have benefit from pitching a lot of projects to Netflix, and hopefully one will one will be taken, and then they are also happy. But it wasn't mine.
Hmm.
um, and yeah, I was like, mm. And at that, like a few years back, I made a music video for an artist in Lisbon, in Portugal. And I mean, he had already a quite like a small audience, but it went viral in Portugal and like had 1 million views, and it was crazy at that time. And my sister, who is making professional films, but in the Netherlands,
Hmm.
she also was publishing work, and we could like compare it a little bit. And it was just a big realization of uh, like how big your audience can be online. And at the end, as a creator, that's something that fuels you a little bit of like, people are watching my work, and that does something to you. Like the fact that you told me that you watched my film, it's, for me, it means a lot, like, for it's your create allez, it's important for an artist,
Hmm.
and to know, and to know what the audience feels like, or to be able to communicate. And cinema in that sense is another caliber, or how do you call it in English, like another, is a different, just a different industry, I think.
Yeah.
But the, the rise of the internet has created a lot of beautiful opportunities in that sense. So I don't want to ignore that, and I want to to also yeah, also try that and see it as a goal or something beautiful, and not to compare them to and say that one is better than the other. But um, yeah,
Yeah. Both have both have meaning and both are unique in their own separate ways. Like you can't say cinema is better than YouTube or YouTube is better than cinema. Like they're both, it's like comparing apples and oranges. They're unique in their own regard, and they each have their own way of communicating or allowing the viewer to experience the art form or the story.
yeah. And YouTube is just a bigger. It's harder
Why do you say
because you
that?
need to you need to grab the attention, and in cinema your audience is in the cinema locked
Right.
for 2 hours.
Yeah.
In YouTube you need to, yeah, you need to grab the attention. It's a double-edged sword, I think, because
Mm.
it changes your way of creating. So I think cinema is more pure in that sense. The
Yeah.
artist has some as freedom. I personally, I like silence. I like long shots. I like one takes. I like
Hmm.
rhythm. So that's why I love cinema, I think. Uh, it's crazy when you or beautiful when you're in a cinema and you are forced to watch a shot of 10 minutes, for instance, and it's
Yeah.
great. Like, it's
Yeah.
an experience. You can feel like also irritated or like, but it's the fact that you have like an agreement with in that setting with the artist also, like, but I will watch your movie. I will I will I will see why you chose to make me watch this, because at the end it's a story, right?
Mhm.
It's at the end the artist is not doing this by accident. It's like,
Right.
okay, but why? And then in YouTube you don't have that chance. You have to adapt, and you have to really, yeah, I mean, the best example, of course, is Casey Neistat, who had his HBO series, and it didn't work. It was a big flop with his brother, the Neistat brothers. HBO has signed it, and like really, they showed it on TV, and it was a big failure. But then he just does the same thing on YouTube, and it blows up. That is the beauty, I think, of the internet, of just a different format, a different
Mhm.
way of distribution.
Right. Yeah. That's interesting with you mentioned loving the long shots, the one takes, the minimally edited film or yeah, the minimally edited film. And it makes me think of like I don't know if you've seen any of Tarkovsky's films, like Stalker.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
like it makes me think of that.
It's a
Or
big inspiration of me, of course.
yeah, yeah, his stuff is really good. Or Terrence Malick, like The Tree of
Hmm.
Life, if you've seen that,
Yeah.
where they're just these beautiful, like you just sit in that vibe or that emotion, and nothing is prohibited. Nothing is maybe captivating in a way, but you are enveloped by that emotion or just that environment. And it's something that I see very little in YouTube, for example. Yourself and I think maybe a couple other creators have really been the only ones that I've seen that have really captured an element of that.
Mm.
And I wonder if that will, like, how people will react to that, or how people respond to that type of thoughtfulness, that slowness, the intentionality, as opposed to the very quick, flashy, attention grabbing things.
Well, yeah, I think that's the hard part, is also to know where you are publishing, and
Mm-hmm.
that's for me a struggle at the moment, because I want to make long content and my style, but I know that the audience will not watch because there are a million other options,
Sure.
and your mind is looking for another dopamine hit. So um, I have to compete with so many distractions,
Hmm.
and so that, yeah, that in a sense I have to make an offer, or how do you call it,
Like a compromise.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah,
How does that make you feel as an artist?
creative. I Compromises are a way,
Hmm.
a good it's something good to have compromises,
Hmm.
because then you have to start thinking and come up with solutions in a creative way, and that's just fun, I think.
Sure.
But
Hmm.
to be clear, like, I know I still want to make cinema.
Yeah.
It's just not for now, I think.
Hmm.
um yeah, for me it's like when time is there, or ripe. How do you say, when time is ready? I don't know.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
When-
Like when the opportunity presents itself, you're
yeah, and
you're
I
you're
also
ready for it.
oh, yeah, when I'm ready for it, I think I have to learn more about writing, I think.
Hmm.
And I mean, the one rule in filmmaking, that, and not the one rule, but something that we hear a lot in film school, is you need to live first
Hmm.
to tell a story. So as a filmmaker, as a real artist, you're telling stories, personal stories, um, from somewhere deep sometimes. And if you didn't live conflict, or just like life,
Mm-hmm.
then there isn't much to tell, right?
Right.
So I look at in that way of, like, yeah, when time is right, um, I will I will tell stories
Hmm.
in cinema, but on YouTube, maybe also a book. It's just a way of choosing the right medium in that sense.
Hmm. I really admire your your self-awareness. I don't know if that's the right word, but
So
like you throughout this conversation you mentioned like early on from a child you realized, hey, maybe acting isn't for me. Maybe there are other opportunities. Maybe I can explore other things. And just now you said like, I know that cinema is in my future. It's something that I want to do, but not right now. And I feel like that's something that I struggle with is I want everything right now. I want to, if I have an idea or if I have a passion, like just start it. I'm going to do it and I'm just going to go. But there is a level of intentionality and awareness and of patience, like letting an
mm,
idea develop and wait that is really beautiful. And like you said, having the awareness of, just living life, exploring, collecting experiences, and I don't know, almost letting the story, or letting the future, it's like you're planting seeds, and the seeds over time, over your experiences and your lived life, they start to sprout up. And maybe one of those seeds is an interesting idea for a story, maybe it's not. But having that patience and that self-awareness of, you know maybe the time will come, and when it does, I'll be ready for it, but in the meantime, I'm just going to water these seeds and let them grow.
Yeah, I think the reason that I do that, or I am able to, is that I don't make cinema or filmmaker part of my identity.
Hmm.
So
Wow.
I I don't want to be a successful filmmaker.
Hmm.
I'm not striving to be that. I did, but I had to come to that realization of that is a, a road with no ending and only disappointment in yourself, I think.
Hmm.
Because when is that moment that you will feel succeeded?
Mm-hmm.
I think there isn't,
Yeah.
because we always have self-doubt. That's just human. Like, being a human is, in the best situations you will still be insecure, maybe, or
Hmm.
doubt yourself. So if filmmaking would be something that I would strive to be, I could do that, and I could be making short movies, films, and that could be my thing. But then what am I doing then? Like, I am trying to be something, and yeah, I had to realize that. Other, like, it all already gave me a burnout, in almost, like,
Hmm.
in a sense of, yeah, in that sense of just having an identity crisis if a film didn't work out, or if my career wasn't going that well. If that is part of your identity and your core, then it's a dangerous place if you encounter failure.
Hmm.
um, so at this moment, I just see myself as a creator, as an artist, but with, um, for instance, what you are doing in design. It's a language, you
Mm-hmm.
you use that to create. And I see myself, I try to be free in that sense of, I don't have to do it this way. I also can draw a story,
Yeah.
and not every story needs to be sold or seen.
Hmm.
um, but if you are creating, I think maybe it's because I'm a generalist, like a real polymath in essence. Yeah, I don't want to be a specialist in a medium, in filmmaking. I just want to create and observe the world and tell stories in my way and communicate how I see the world, and hopefully help people, or um, but not be limited by an image that I have of myself.
Hmm.
Um, yeah.
What advice would you give someone, a creator who is struggling with finding their identity in their chosen art form?
Yeah, maybe to not like try other things, but um, yeah, to I see everything linked with each other. Like
Mm,
everything that you learn is a skill, and it can be the basis of something else, and that you needed that skill or that talent. Um, Most people base their career choice, if it's in a creative um, uh, genre, is based on talent, right? It's
mhm,
based on, oh, I'm so good at this, I'm going to do this, um, or my parents tell me that I'm good at this, or my friends, or I know I have a talent in this. It, I think you can see this as a base also,
yeah.
as talent is not the only thing that is needed, because there comes an age where talent doesn't matter anymore, and that just the people that are working harder will be the ones like stay afloat.
Hmm.
um I really believe that, like, at some point it's just who is more dedicated, who wants this more.
Hmm.
So yeah, if you are looking for, or that you're not finding your way or your path, just don't see it as a failure, but like how can you use this as a step to something else, to something related, or to to something that it's a unique way that you have both skills. Then, like, wow, a designer with a skill in theater, like, but that way you become someone unique with your like a unique recipe of talents and skills. And yeah, we all need more polymaths in that way, I think. Or yeah, it's a great way in that, a great time to be alive now, I think. Also when you're lost, because it's not um, a burden anymore to don't know what you want to do, or for the rest of your life, because you can do a lot of things, and like really become a generalist at a lot of things. And at the moment it's clear that those people are thriving. So
Yeah. And is that kind of what you're doing now and how you're positioning yourself for the future?
yeah, um, yeah, realizing that being a polymath is actually a good thing at the moment is for me a big shift in my thinking.
Mm, yeah.
So um, yeah, I'm very optimistic in that sense for the future, for myself, for other creators that are maybe lost in that way. Um, yeah, but yeah, I also struggle with this still. It's, if you ask that, I'm like, okay, but how am I positioning myself? I don't know.
It's a difficult thing, like especially
Yeah.
if you have so many interests and there's a world of opportunity within the internet and social media, and just to be a polymath, to explore various ways of communicating your story and your message, your art form. It's difficult to narrow that down or really position yourself in a way that can be easily received or easily, I don't know, maybe distributed is the right word. I don't know if it is or not,
Yeah.
but I resonate with that because it's something that I struggle with too. And if you were to ask me in a short sentence what I do, I couldn't explain to you what it was because there's so many
What?
different
So,
things.
what do you do in a short sentence?
I hmm. I would probably just
Well,
say
yeah.
I am a I'm a creator who is hmm, I'm a I'm a creative who is in his like apprenticeship stage, who's learning, who's exploring the world of translating ideas and emotions and the the unique way that I see the world into art. Right now, that art is design and writing specifically, and talking to people like yourself. So maybe a quick snippet of that would just be I'm a creative who is working within design now or exploring the world of or the language of design. I don't know. Did that make any sense?
Yeah, I think it's a great nuance to say that at this moment you're working in design, but that you, yeah, also what your ambitions are, and that writing is also a medium that you try to use.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a, yeah, it's important to not see yourself only as a designer.
Yeah. Yeah. It's beautiful stuff, man. Well, Dayo, I could talk to you for hours. I have really
Yeah,
enjoyed our conversation. I've enjoyed just getting to know you on more of a personal basis over the last maybe month or two. So I'm really looking
yeah.
forward to continuing and yeah, hopefully having you back on the podcast and having awesome conversations and seeing, more work that you do. If anyone wants to check you out, check any of your films out, where can they find you?
My website is dayo.be or dayo.be. Yeah, my Instagram is also just, I mean, you will link it somewhere,
Yeah.
but my full name is Dayo Clinkckspoor. And yeah, I'm planning to go actually on, I'm making big changes, and I'm planning, it's still in the early stages, but to go on a very long road trip
Whoa.
and leaving everything here, buying an old Land Rover, uh, and travel Europe and take my camera and my laptop with me and
Wow.
make videos or films. In the process, I hope to make it a weekly upload,
Hmm.
because I feel I'm too comfortable
Hmm.
at the moment, and mm, I'm not, like, I have a lot of ideas, but I'm not doing it because I don't feel like I have to, because I'm so comfortable at the moment. um, and I need that. I need nature. I need
Hmm.
connection with nature. Um, yeah. So it's I'm quite scared. Actually, to be honest, it was a week ago that I had this idea, and I felt a very strong energy in
Hmm.
that. Um, and I was like, okay, I preach a lot of. I think we already talked about this, of having an idea and then listening to that
Yeah.
voice or to that higher power, and you can act on it or you can let it slide. And I've have had a lot of moments in my life that I had this kind of feeling, and that I have let it slide.
Mm.
And now I was like, but I preach this really to a lot of people, to follow your idea, and to that, out of that feeling, that the best things come from that. If you listen to the to ideas that come to you, maybe it's not the most realistic or financially smart decisions,
Sure.
um, or also not the best monetizable, or I don't know what other reasons I can come up with to not do it. But I yeah, I believe that the best things come from that,
Mm.
from following your intuition and your like almost childish ideas. And after that, a lot of insecurities come, right? So how will I do this? How? But I have to act now, right? So otherwise, I'm already scared. So give me one more week, and I will not do it.
Mm.
So this weekend, I will look at a Land Rover, maybe make an offer, and go all in. And I have this course that I, for 1 month, that I still need to finish of I want to coach people in business and artists.
Mm-hmm.
I want to coach artists in their business and making their art and their passion a viable business. So yeah, I want to finish that, but then I want to hit the road maybe and
Yeah.
start creating content on a good basis, on a weekly, or on a weekly basis, I think. And maybe
Wow.
work on a bigger project in the bigger scale, like in general, like use it also for photography and just feeling an intuition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, it's a beautiful way to end this, man. I'm really excited to see what you create and just hear more about your experience. That's incredible.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, man. Awesome, Dale. Well, thank you for your time. It was great talking to you as always, and catch you soon.
Yes, I enjoyed it. Thanks a lot.
Anytime.
Until the next one.
All right. Until the next one.